Nancy Green here. And for me, one of the most powerful things while I was watching the series was when your character, she has to basically tell Ballard what happened to her and, the emotion that she goes through there. And then afterwards, when she's in her bedroom and how she deals with that. Can you talk a bit about getting into that scene and just sort of understanding the dynamics there?
Mm. Wow. It was so difficult. Um, I had talked to um I had talked to a couple people in my life who had, been victims to assault. And I never wanted it to seem like I was like, hey, I know you dealt with this. How should I do it on screen? But it felt like I was able to have. I already knew about the situations, but I asked them, "What would you like to see on screen when it comes to being represented as a victim and the thoughts and the feelings and like what exactly would you want to see as representation?" And that got me where I needed to be. Thankful. I'm so thankful to my community for being so open with me and vulnerable about it. But also too, it was my it was my castmates, it was the crew. That day that I had to come in, I think I had to do both of those scenes where I have to, well, maybe no, I don't remember. But I know that the scene where I had to tell Ballard and like admit that it did happen to me, I had talked to everybody ahead of time. I had texted her. I said, "Hey, I know I'm usually bubbly and full of energy on my days in, but I'm going to need my space. I'm probably not going to be as talkative. I really want to get into this moment and I really want to make sure I do this scene justice." And they were like, "No problem. We'll let everybody know." And on set, they took care of me. They allowed me to have my chair in a corner somewhere in the dark. They let me have my lunch by myself. They barely chatted with me. They understood I needed to settle in this character. And that was hard. I had never done that before. So actually getting into that, recognizing the gravity of the situation, and also too in my head, I like to try it when I'm doing scenes that feel very, grounded and dramatic. I always like to imagine like if I was talking to my grandma. And I kept thinking about my grandma because my grandma's not with me. So I was kept thinking like, oh my gosh, what would it be like if I had to tell my grandma this thing that she had no idea happened and da 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 da. Like I was trying to find ways to pull from my life on how that would feel me telling a family member, me telling somebody I'm getting closer to. So it was a challenge and a half, and it took me a second it took me a while to come down from those emotions, but I was so supported by my community, by everybody on set, by Maggie, the directors, everybody were so supportive of me to allow me to get where I needed to be. So I'm extremely grateful.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much. And it was fabulous. And that, it really was, you did an amazing job.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That means the world.
I really enjoyed the movie Invitation, the 2022. And I think I did see the 2015, and I thought it was really interesting that both you and John Carroll are in this show. And he's in one of my favorite horror movies, Gothica. He plays a bad guy in that. So, like, as I was watching him, I was like, is he going to be a bad guy in this? But for me, I really find it interesting the sort of crossover between like straight up horror, like supernatural horror or slasher,
Mhm.
and sort of the thriller detective genre. And I wanted to know if you could talk a bit about that, especially here where you have like these sort of gruesome murders that happen.
I think I think horror is I think with the invitation, mostly because I wasn't really like on set for like a majority of the big, gruesome scenes. But I think there's still some fantasy there that kind of allows you to see it and get into it, but also allows you to remove yourself a little easier. I think with procedurals like this, talking about cold case, talking about gruesome crimes, especially when for me specifically, when they're women-centered crimes, I think it latches onto you much more because I think it's like, whoa, yes, where these cases are, made up and they're part of Michael Connelly's beautiful universe, but also like these people exist. These victims are definitely they're based on like true moments that might have happened with Mitzi that aren't exactly it, but similar. And I think that's what really it like, oh my gosh, it even, getting to the when we had our police consultants, they showed us a real murder book and they showed us like what they had to see on a day on not a daily basis, but a majority of the time, this is what they're seeing. This gruesome thing a human walking this planet is doing. And I think, oh my goodness, I think it has a heavier burden in that you have to understand that these are people's, ugh, these are real people that we could be, that it's like similar moments. These are real people that we are representing, in the real world. And it's just, I think it just is a little bit heavier than I would, than the fantasy horror does for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's one thing. Like I like slashers, but they're probably not as much because you start to think, well, this could happen. This is something that people have done. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like completely even like the slashers that feel like they talk about like, real stories that happen. Those always get me too. I'm always like, oh my gosh, like there are real slashers in the world. But like when you watching Scream and you watching stuff like that, you just like, okay, she should have left. Like there's no reason why she at this party. You know what I'm saying? So I think, stuff like this, it usually hits me a little bit harder.
all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's a great show. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that.